and we thank the government of Pakistan for all the efforts. Can I please invite Mr. Omer Zaheer Meer to moderate the question and answer sessions with Mr. Abdullah Khan Sumbal? Omer Zaheer Meer is a member, Global Tax Forum, Chairman, MNP and Tax Committee, ACCA. Welcome, Omer.
Thank you, Hina. Do we have Mr. Sumbal with us live now?
I'm with you. I was just returning to a guest, and I'll do multitasking. But I'm very much with you.
Okay, great. Your opening remarks have been quite interesting, and I'm faced with a dilemma that many of the questions that were supposed to be asked of you, you have already answered. So thank you for that. With that, I'll begin with the first question. This budget has remarkably been different. You're right in that, with a total outlay of 2.424 trillion, development budget of 337 billion, and a COVID-19 relief package of 56.5 billion. Would you like to share some insights that what are your views about the strategic direction of the Punjab government in lieu of this Punjab Finance Act 2020? And obviously, we are talking about the strategic direction in terms of the finances.
Was this question meant for me?
Yes, sir. Okay. This Q&A is exclusively with you for the next 10 minutes. And then the rest of it.
Thank you. Thank you. And my apologies. Let me say, yes, 337 billion was something that we weren't really anticipating. I'll be very candid with you here, because the estimated provincial surplus that the Punjab government had to throw up, as I shared with you, was obviously, ominously lurking around 125 billion. It finally got settled at, right? So that being a fact meant that we were always going to, cut corners. We've actually had to freeze our salary budget, right? Freeze our salary budget at the last year's level. There are increments, that are given to the workforce. There are other allowances that have to be administered, whether you like them or not, but you have to administer allowances. Some incentives are also given to our, newly created authorities and units that are to take the development agenda forward. So it was very difficult. The balancing act, that was very difficult. And we were always thinking that we have to, we are being watched as the province who would set an example. The other provinces were also looking at us while we were, while we were completing our budget making process somewhere in April and May. The other provinces would consult us frequently. So हमारे लिए ये एक बहुत बड़ा it was a pressure situation. But thanks to a lot of good work, good consultation, good advice by various stakeholders, which obviously many of them belong from from outside the government as well. So that was very gratifying and very useful. The budget basically is one big I would say a silo of sorts. But it needs to be understood in the larger governance framework. And we now very clearly believe civil society also contains think tanks and academia. We also reached out to them and we sharpened our understanding there with their assistance. The development budget clearly spells out two things, if I may submit here. One, that our social sector development has been factored in big time. We know for a fact that the social sector indicators are still not shaping up enough, right? And in international comparisons, in regional comparisons, we are lagging behind. So very clearly, we have increased our health and education allocations, both on the development and non-development side. Since your question was more about development side, let me say this. And we believe that only through human development, only through good, investments in the health and education sector can you move towards economic development as well. You need a workforce which is educated and which is trained. And without having good human development indicators, you would struggle. So we believe that human development is a better index rather than economic growth alone. Economic growth is good, but not good enough. Economic growth should be coupled with human development. So that's our understanding. And going forward, this would be the key factor. The development budget nicely complements the Finance Act. I think wherever we have given greater development allocations, we've backed them up with substantial, if not big, substantial allocations on the non-development side as well. The disconnect between the development and non-development allocations has been reduced. I'm not claiming that it has been removed. There is also a debate that the development, non-development, differentiation is artificial. The line between them is way too thin, and it needs to be, seen through as well. So this is something that we've really been mindful of. So the development budget needs to be seen in this context, and we also believe that utilization of development funds will be critical. The finance department only provides cash cover to the development spending, but we would also be working very closely with our planning and development department, and we would like to ensure that the development spending is adequate. This year, despite COVID, we finished at 90% utilization, which was very good, which was very heartening. So 238 billion were utilized despite COVID. Massive cuts were introduced in the last quarter of the last financial year. But even then, we finished at 238 billion, which was very comforting. Thank you.
I totally agree, especially the fact that all financial circles know that last quarter is the most critical and where the most utilizations are normally made. And it's very heartening to know that you have such a good focus and impetus on the social development, which is the key to economic revival of the lesser segments of the society. So thank you for that. The next question, sir, you have mentioned in your discussion, and this is a discourse that's been happening in the professional circles. I remember a conference that ACCA Lahore Chamber, Lahore Tax Bar jointly held about harmonization. So I'm pretty sure you are on top of all the developments. Now, in this catch-22 situation where three provinces are agreeing on one principle and Sindh wants to go on initiation, do you believe there is any solution to this? And can we hope to see that anytime soon?
Yes, I think there is reason to believe that we are heading in the right direction. As I submitted early, in my initial submissions, that harmonization would not mean a total consensus. A broad-based convergence would be good enough, and I think will be useful. So we're getting there slowly. There is some politics involved in it. Political economy needs to be understood at that level as well, at the seriously political level as well. So I think it will be addressed well. The political economy issues are being addressed. There's a lot of consultation going on. And the federal government also keeps interacting with Sindh at different levels. The impression that the relations are strained may be a little exaggerated. It's occasionally a tense interaction on the face of it, but behind the scenes there is obviously an effort to keep assuaging the concerns of it houses the financial capital of Pakistan. Karachi still is the financial capital of Pakistan, and still understands that. So I think this is very well, acknowledged by other provinces also. Punjab definitely, looks at it like this. The harmonization issue needs to be settled within this financial year. It would really be, most appropriate if it is settled in the first half of the financial year. I'm sure you've got experts on your panel who would know more about it. But my understanding of it is that the federal government is leading the effort in collaboration with international partners as well. The World Bank is very keen to see this happening, right? And I think ये सारी जो support होगी, this is kind of ring fencing this issue and would take it forward. Sindh के ऊपर pressure है, Punjab के ऊपर pressure. I think the KP is also playing ball. The KP is also very understanding. And initial the first discussions which I participated in somewhere in the same months last year were much more difficult. The last few discussions were much more congenial in terms of understanding each other. There was an understanding that everybody is looking at the provincial governments in particular, and are probably assuming that the provincial governments are not, getting their act together, and that is unfortunate. But the pressure, it's positive. So I see the pressure also working out. The understanding has increased, has enhanced many folds, and we're getting there. ये जो point of origin and point of destination है, ये भी सबसे critical question नहीं होगा. Basically ये होगा कि harmonization needs to be done in a framework. इसमें tax rates भी count करेंगे, इसमें zero rating exemptions all will figure in very prominently. So maybe COVID has given us an opportunity to understand each other well. Our interaction with Sindh at different levels, the Punjab government's interaction with Sindh is very purposeful. Punjab understood a lot from the Sindh, experiences in the PPP, scheme of things. Sindh has done very well in PPPs, by the way. So हमने वहाँ से उनसे सीखा है. I think SRB had a head start over all other revenue authorities. I think PRA's creation owed a lot to the understanding that we got from Sindh. So we really are still optimistic, and we hope that these differences will be ironed out to a large extent. We don't really need a total out-and-out consensus.
Great. Thank you very much for such insights. Since we have almost ran out of time, I would just go to a very popular question we have been receiving from our members. And that is that you have mentioned, and I think that's a very professional approach of engaging various stakeholders. Earlier this year, we had a session with the federal government, and we had FPR's board representative on that. And they were kind enough to agree to have a consultative process throughout the year, rather than just having it before the budget, when everybody is really pushed for time. So do you believe such an exercise can be done at the Punjab level? I personally sit on the Global Tax Forum of ACCA, and ACCA with its expertise across the globe can really bring a lot of expertise to the table. And then we have Chamber, Lahore Tax Bar, everybody together. So in the spirit of the things that you were thinking about, thinking ahead and collaborating, perhaps that exercise can really bring some results. The closing question, what are your thoughts on this proposal?
I think this would be wonderful if it happens. As I suggested earlier on as well, that had it not been for the social distancing requirements, we would have reached out more. We were all set to do that because we knew that this was going to be a critical year. And when COVID set in, the things were really turned upside down, and then, we had to go back to the drawing board, as it were. Really, entire number crunching was redone. So it was even more desirable then to ask around and to really, develop an understanding that goes beyond our worldview. Our new worldview is obviously restricted. We never assume that we are Mr. Know-alls. No, none of us is. We have a finance minister who's been a banker, who's very forward-looking, a very progressive young man who obviously is very keen to interact. The COVID phenomenon, like the government does occasionally, right? So, but let me again say this with total, conviction that we were going to reach out to the think tanks, to the intelligentsia, to the chambers of commerce, to other leading institutions and organizations that have a role to play, that can guide on revenue issues, taxation issues, and economic uplift issues, economic development issues. We were going to reach out to them and understand. Just then, we were pushed back by something as big as COVID. But even
Fully
then, we realized that getting opinion from different walks of life and from different sectors is going to be important, and we advertised. The advertisement wasn't just meant for the citizens alone. Obviously, it was done under the rubric of citizens' budget, but we also thought that while we were asking the citizens about their inputs and their insights, the intelligentsia and the private sector organizations were also most welcome to have sent us their suggestions. One or two did actually, and I can share the names with you if you so want. Right, one of the two or three, not one or two, two or three of them did. We got something from the PILDAT, for instance. The PILDAT wrote to us about one dimension of budget making, and we were very encouraged by that. So that's how we've approached it. And next year, God willing, inshallah, with no COVID, really impacting our strides towards the budget making effort, we'll definitely do it.
Great. Thank you, sir. Our team will engage with your good office with the proposals to build a mechanism to interact throughout the year. Thank you very much for your insights. We are